Today, we're on the Spy Tour in Seoul. We're going to go to the War Museum, check out the DMZ, and then peer into North Korea. Hi, my name is Amy Moncure, and we're creating the travel videos that we look for when planning our trips. If you'd like more concise travel videos full of practical tips and useful information, subscribe and click on that notification bell. Here we go. April 27th, 2018, a historic day on the Korean Peninsula. The first time a North Korean leader stepped in South Korea since 1953. North Korean Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in started the first steps towards denuclearization and a formal end to the Korean War. Since the April peace talks, the JSA, the Joint Security Area, is closed to tourists as government officials continue to work towards a peace agreement. The JSA is the only part of the DMZ demilitarized zone where the North and South Korean forces stand face to face. With peace breaking out across the peninsula, both North and South Korea have taken down their loudspeakers that blasted propaganda, and in South Korea's case, K-pop music, across the border. Koreans under the age of 65 have always lived with the threat of war from North Korea. Living here, there is an air of hope for a unified Korea and a little bit of a wait-and-see attitude. Our DMZ Spy Tour begins with a 1968 Blue House raid, where 31 North Korean commandos tried to assassinate South Korean President Park Chung-hee. The North Koreans, disguised as South Korean army soldiers, made it all the way to Segomcheom Jahomun checkpoint, only 100 meters from the president's Blue House. Here, we stop to remember Police Chief Choi, who was shot and killed questioning the North Koreans at the checkpoint. During the raid, the police successfully killed all but 2 of the North Korean soldiers. One escaped back to North Korea, where he was called a hero. The other was captured, interrogated for a year, and in the end became a South Korean citizen. Today, the checkpoint is still highly monitored and protected, being so close to the president's Blue House. Next stop, the Daesan Unification Observatory, to peer across the river into North Korea. It's amazing to be so close to North Korea and to see where the country was torn in two. On a clear day, you can even see North Korean citizens working their farms. But the highlight of the tour was going to the DMZ, just 50 kilometers north of Seoul. The 4 kilometers inside the DMZ is still covered in mines to prevent invasions from either side. Even with the hope of peace and reunification, the DMZ is still heavily guarded on both sides, and it's illegal to take pictures of the DMZ fence. With the hope of unification, one of the biggest questions is what's to become of the DMZ. Right now, there are dreams of removing all the mines and turning the zone into one of the largest parks in Asia. At the DMZ, we could see the section of the fence cut by the 31 North Korean commandos. This section was patrolled by both South Korean 25th ID and the United States 2nd ID armies. Here, we tied our messages of hope and peace to the fence. A quick photo opportunity? I mixed and matched wearing a South Korean captain's beret and a United States Army jacket. If you want peace, remember war. The Korean War Museum in Seoul wraps up the Spy Tour. Each of these flags represents the countries that assisted South Korea during the war. To understand the Korean War, we first need to start with World War II. Before and during World War II, Japan had taken over large portions of Asia, including occupying Korea from 1910 to 1945. With strategic interest in the same portions of Asia, Russia joined the Allied forces, declaring war against Japan on August 8, 1945, between the United States bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 1 week later, Japan announced its surrender. As part of the agreements at the end of World War II, Korea was split almost in half along the 38th parallel, with North Korea being managed by Russia and South Korea managed by the United States. The Soviets established a communist government led by Kim Jong-un's grandfather, Kim Il-sung. Each country has a different name for the Korean War. South Korea, the 625, or the 625 upheaval, marking June 25, 1950, the beginning of the Korean War. North Korea, the Fatherland Liberation War. China, the war to resist America and aid Korea. United States, the Forgotten War, or the Unknown War, because the American people had little knowledge compared to World War II and the Vietnam War.
On the 25th of June, the well-equipped North Korean army struck in force, pushed across the border, overran the South Korean defenses, and plunged the nation into war.
For the first 2 months, North Korea decimated the South Korean army, almost conquering the entire country. To help South Korea, additional United States troops arrived and pushed North Korea back to the 38th parallel. But the United States Army didn't stop there. Under General MacArthur's command, the South Korean ROK and the United States armies continued the attack north of the 38th parallel, all the way to the Yalu River, the border between Korea and China. The threat of invasion into China caused China to send floods of soldiers supporting North Korea in the war. For the next 2 years, the fighting centered around the DMZ, causing mass destruction in this part of the country.
The 24th Division left behind it a scorched earth in its withdrawal. If you can't take it with you, the motto went, burn it. The roads south were clogged with refugees, homeless people, uprooted from their villages and driven into the winter cold by the terrifying threat of a communist occupation.
Estimates of 1 million and as high as 2 million people were killed in the Korean War. In total, Seoul changed hands 4 times. This explains why so many of the buildings in South Korea were built or restored after 1953. Also, almost all of the trees you see in Seoul and the surrounding regions were planted after the war. The Korean Armistice Agreement, signed on July 27, 1953, ended the fighting. However, no peace treaty was ever signed. Notice the 38th parallel is a straight line and the DMZ is jagged. The military demarcation line is the actual border between North and South Korea inside the DMZ. It was drawn along the line where North and South were fighting when the peace agreement was signed. Technically, North and South Korea are still at war, even though North Korea claims to have won the war. Even with the agreement, North Korea has provoked South Korea a number of times, including the 1968 Blue House raid, the 1976 axe murder incident, building tunnels leading to Seoul discovered in 1976, and in 2010 sinking the South Korean ship, the ROK's Chonin, killing 46 soldiers. The Viator Spy Tour really taught us so much about some of the historic events in South Korea, especially the South Korean War in the 1950s. Being able to see the DMZ line and to learn about the utter destruction and to see what the South Korean people have done to become an economic power is really pretty impressive. Thank you for joining us on this tour. Until next time, cheers!